Welcome dear viewers. After a lot of travel, we found that our phones constantly lost charge while on the road. So since we are food travel and DIY, we decided to build a custom-made power bank. We take you through our design, build of the battery pack and connection to the power bank circuit, and also how we build our custom power bank box. Subscribe for more projects and also stay tuned. First, we need 18 650 batteries. I plan to use 5 of them here. We should make sure that all of them are the same make and model and also the same specifications. Here I am using 2000 mAh 18650 cells of the same brand Orange. Next, we need a BMS or a battery management circuit which can support 2000 mAh. This is a single cell BMS that I use. I scratch the ends of the BMS nickel strips so that the solder can attach properly. I also scratch the ends of the battery so that the solder can attach itself here as well. Next, I heat up my soldering iron and add a bit of solder to the ends. The solder that I use is a rosin cored solder. I find that it's a bit better to use. I use the cardboard box my batteries came in to hold my batteries while I solder. I align the BMS nickel strip and the end of the battery using the cardboard box. Then, I use a soldering iron to melt the solder between the BMS strip and the battery. I use a wooden stick to keep the nickel strip in place while the solder bonds. Now I have 5 batteries with the BMSs soldered onto them. I hot glue all of them together on the back side. I also hot glue them in the front. Now I add some solder on the positive and negative terminals of the BMS. I also add solder to my connection wires. Finally, I connect my connection wires to the BMS. My final battery pack looks like this. I now hot glue my BMS in place. Hot glue works for this because it doesn't conduct electricity and is safe to use on electronics. Now I add solder to the other ends of the wires. I plan to use a parallel connection of the batteries. As illustrated in the diagram, the batteries all will have the same voltage and the current will add up in the battery. I decided to use this type of connection as opposed to series because the battery voltage is 3.7 volts, and if that gets added up, I get about 18.5 volts, which is not something I want in my circuit. Now I connect the leading wires to my batteries. I need to make a cut to remove the insulation from the wires and connect it. I use a blade for this. As before, I add solder to each wire. Then I flip my battery and then solder them together. Now I have my battery all soldered together, all the positives connected to one wire and all the negatives connected to another wire. These are now connected to my power bank circuit. This time I keep the wires inside the wire holes and then add a bit of solder to the ends. Next, I need to protect my connections and the batteries. I add hot glue all over the place. One of the benefits of hot glue is that it's insulating and acts like a barrier between the connections and holds them in place. I add them to the ends of the battery as well. This is my final battery connection. I test it by pressing the on switch of the circuit. Seems to work fine. I use a multimeter to check all the connections. Basically what I'm trying to do is to check if there is a battery connection between all the batteries and the main circuit. I do this by keeping one of the probes on the multimeter on the negative end of the power bank circuit and touching the positive of each battery one by one with the probe. There is a voltage of about 3.5 volts on each battery. Then I do the opposite and touch the probe with the positive of the power bank circuit and then touch the negative terminal of each battery. Next, we need a case to store the power bank. I make this out of PVC pipe. To see more on how to create your own case with PVC pipe, click on this link. I made a lid as well, and I drilled holes in the lid where the LED display of the circuit would be shown. The trick here is to drill some holes within the window and then slowly make the window larger until you are at the right size. Holes are made for the USB connections as well. I now add some bent PVC pieces so that I can keep the circuit in place. I further add some tabs on top of the box so that I can screw the lid in place later. For joining all of the PVC sheets together, I use cyanoacrylate adhesive and baking soda. Please remember to see this video to see how I do it in detail. Finally, my circuit is in place and I place the lid over the box. Now I add 2 screws to fix the board in place. I also add screws for the lid and the lid chips off. That's not supposed to happen. Subscribe to see what happens next. and if you also make mistakes while DIYing. Okay, so I made some small holes for the screws to enter into the lid. Now the screws go through. Next, we paint the box using blue spray paint. I remove all the circuits and connections to paint. I wait a couple of days for the paint to dry, and then I add the batteries and the circuit, and then I screw the lid in place. Now, what would a build be without our logo? Food travel and DIY. This power bank gives my phone a full charge once it's completely empty. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe for more content. Have a fantastic day ahead. Bye.